Welcome to the critique. Okay, so today we're looking at a really powerful, very personal defense of Erica Kirk after Charlie Kirk's assassination. It's primarily aimed at Candace Owens and others spreading, frankly, destructive conspiracy theories, seemingly for financial gain. Let's jump right in on how to boost the impact here.
Yeah, that passion is undeniable. Feel it straight away. The author's clearly deeply angered on the family's behalf, but I do wonder if maybe too much energy is spent just condemning the critics, their moral character. We might be missing a chance here for a more systemic look at how this kind of misinformation actually works, especially after a national tragedy.
Right, I see that. The writing is heavy on the moral language right now. Lots of horrible, hateful, downright evil. And it really zeroes in on Owens, her perceived lack of grace, this idea that it's all about her. But doesn't that kind of raw moral punch connect better, maybe more immediately with an audience that's already frustrated? Why risk watering that down with a more detached structural analysis?
Well, that visceral hit works, yes, but maybe only with people who are already 100% convinced these critics are just, awful people. If the goal is to persuade a wider audience, or even just to really clearly show how insidious this attack is, focusing only on personal flaws feels a bit narrow. The weakness, I think, is that this moral focus kind of limits who the piece can effectively reach. It risks just preaching to the choir.
Okay, so the trade-off is maybe losing some of that immediate emotional hit for potentially greater persuasive reach in the long run.
Exactly. So the suggestion is to kind of elevate the argument, re-angle, treat these conspiracy theories less as just a personal moral failing and more as a strategy, a deliberate, often profitable tactic. We could almost call it like a grief exploitation model. It's how they tap into that existing public mistrust for, clicks and cash.
Grief exploitation model. That feels much more substantial. It shifts the frame from they're bad people to they're running a kind of predictable, cynical playbook.
Precisely. And if we can show the playbook, we undermine the whole operation, not just the player. So instead of just saying Owens generates revenue, maybe dedicate a section to breaking down how they build that narrative. Take the completely baseless claim about Frank Turk being involved. He was in the car, for goodness sake. Analyze that move.
And the source material actually gives us a perfect hook, that quote about people lacking intelligence, lacking trust in the government.
Yes, use that quote. Show how the critics weaponize that specific sentiment. Explain the tactical reason for dropping a name like Frank Turk in there. What does it achieve? It sows doubt, creates division right within the victim's circle. When you sort of forensically unpack that, you're revealing the architecture of the disinformation, not just yelling about the people spreading. Show the machine, not just the malice.
That shift definitely makes for a stronger, maybe more broadly convincing piece. Okay, so if we're taking that structural approach, the next challenge is often keeping things focused, right?
Absolutely. We need to talk about focus because the material does a good job showing the sheer volume of attacks the family's facing. But that breadth might actually be fragmenting the main point.
Right. It feels like it tries to cover a lot of ground, maybe too quickly. It jumps from Owens' assassination theories, then over to those J.D. Vance rumors about Erica Kirk, then it's defending Frank Turk and Mikey McCoy, who Turning Point folks see as a hero.
And the weakness there is really about narrative hierarchy. It asks the listener to juggle three pretty different kinds of attacks all at once. You've got the main assassination conspiracy, then these sort of character hits like the Vance stuff, and then defending specific allies. Treating them all as equal kind of muddies the water, obscures the main objective, which really feels like it should be tackling that core assassination conspiracy head on.
So, the focus gets too diffused. It blurs the most critical message. How do we fix that? How do we tighten it up, but still show the full scope of what the Kirks are dealing with?
I think we sharpen it by clearly prioritizing the main narrative. That's the response to the assassination conspiracy. Then establish a clearer hierarchy for everything else. Every supporting point needs to directly feed back into that central conflict. If the core goal is pushing back on the assassination narrative, then everything else becomes either context or, examples of secondary damage.
Okay, like creating a funnel for the information, not just throwing darts everywhere.
Exactly like that. So look at how Frank Turk or Mikey McCoy are brought in. Don't just introduce them as people needing defense. Frame their defense specifically as showing who the assassination theories are targeting. These are the loyal people being falsely implicated precisely to fracture the family's support network. See?
So they become evidence of the conspiracy's tactics, not just separate side issues.
Exact. That reinforces the main point. And the rumors about Erica and J.D. Vance, they're important for showing the constant darts being thrown. Absolutely. But maybe handle them in a distinct, shorter section. Call it character assassination or something. Or just trim it down significantly. That keeps the laser focus on the main conspiracy ecosystem, while still acknowledging the awful collateral damage.
Okay. Organizing the attacks like that structurally shows the system at work, which, loops back perfectly to that first critique point about systemic analysis. Makes the whole thing feel much tighter.
Right. Now, moving towards the end, the conclusion. The argument is already, as we said, emotionally. It really lands the current suffering caused by fake images. The trauma for people who have to relive that every single day. That immediacy is strong.
I agree. It definitely conveys the human cost. But there's something in the tone of the wrap-up that might be, slightly undercutting that urgency.
Oh, interesting. What's the tonal choice you're picking up on?
It's the assertion that the truth will inevitably come out, that the attackers will eventually be humiliated. It almost unintentionally lowers the stakes of the fight that's happening right now.
Okay, the sense of passive, inevitable victory. Yeah, phrases like, I cannot wait for them to be humiliated, or the truth will get revealed, it always does. That gives this feeling of, guaranteed future justice. And the weakness there is it might make the audience feel like they can just wait for karma or fate to sort it out, rather than needing to act now.
Exactly. It kind of lessens the impact of all the evidence presented about the damage being done today, the harm to the victims, the kids, the daily reliving of trauma. If victory is inevitable, why is this defense, so urgently needed right now? It creates a slight tension.
That's the conflict. Yeah. The significance needs to feel urgent, not just passively optimistic. The material itself needs to feel like a crucial part of the fight for truth, not just a prediction of how the fight ends.
So the fix then, it's about shifting the conclusion's focus away from future punishment for the attack and squarely onto the critical, urgent need to protect the victims, protect Charlie Kirk's legacy right now. The emphasis moves from what happens to them to what needs to be done for the family.
That's a really powerful shift. I think. It turns the ending into a genuine call to action for stewardship. We should probably double down on that incredibly poignant plea from Erica Kirk, the one about her kids, where she says, I want my kids to go on the internet one day when they're older and see things that we're all trying to process this. That whole sentiment.
Yes, that quote feels like the absolute anchor for the conclusion. The call to action needs to revolve around that need, protection, legacy.
Absolutely. We move from the liars are going to get theirs eventually to something more like we have a duty to ensure this legacy is preserved accurately. So the concrete example becomes asking listeners to take immediate, thoughtful action, like urging them to pray and consider and think about whatever you put online. That makes the piece itself an active part of the defense. It makes the listener feel like a participant in safeguarding the truth today, not just someone waiting for the bad guys to fall later.
Okay, that feels like a complete and really meaningful restructure. So, just to quickly recap the main suggestions. First, pivot from purely moral condemnation to a systemic analysis, maybe using that grief exploitation model idea. Second, sharpen the focus. Prioritize the assassination critique and structure other attacks clearly underneath it to avoid diffusion. And third, shift the conclusion away from inevitable victory and towards the urgent present need to protect the family and legacy. Make the calls to action immediate.
Yeah, exactly. These are all aimed at making the argument tighter, stronger, and ultimately more persuasive for, hope, a much broader audience. We definitely encourage you to refine the material with these points in mind, and of course, send the revised version back for another look.